It was 3:14 a.m. in a quiet Arizona suburb when something strange appeared on a family's doorbell camera. At first, it looked like a lost woman, barefoot, wearing torn clothes and standing completely still under the porch light. Her face was turned away from the camera. She didn't ring the bell, she just stood there. For nearly 2 minutes, she didn't move. The homeowner, Mark, was watching live on his phone from his bedroom upstairs. He shouted through the intercom, "Ma'am, do you need help?" No answer. Then slowly, she turned toward the camera. What made Mark freeze wasn't her face, but what was around her neck. It looked like a metal collar with a chain hanging down her shoulder. Before he could react, the woman whispered something. The microphone barely caught it. "He's coming." Seconds later, she vanished from view, running into the darkness. The police arrived 10 minutes later, but found nothing. 2 days later, local news reported that a woman had escaped from a nearby home where she had been held captive. The doorbell footage went viral, but here's the part most people don't know. When detectives reviewed the video frame by frame, they noticed something horrifying. Behind the woman, in the far corner of the street, stood a man, completely still, watching. He was never found.
This next clip comes from a doorbell camera in Wisconsin. The video starts with a soft knock, not from a hand, but from something tapping metal against the door. A man named Chris checked his phone and saw a person in a delivery uniform holding a small package. He looked half asleep, but decided to answer. When he opened the door, no one was there. Confused, he stepped outside, looked left and right. Nothing. He went back inside, but when he checked the footage the next morning, something was very wrong. The video clearly shows the delivery man smiling, but when Chris opened the door, the figure didn't move away. It disappeared. One frame he was there, the next frame, gone. Local paranormal experts later examined the footage and found something even stranger. On the package label, when zoomed in, the name printed wasn't Chris's, it was his mother's name. She had passed away 7 years earlier on the exact same date.
Not every disturbing doorbell story is supernatural. Some are man-made nightmares. In 2020, a family in Texas installed a smart doorbell system to feel safer. A week later, they started receiving notifications, motion detected, every night at 2:11 a.m. Each time, they checked the feed and saw themselves. The footage showed the family's own living room, but from a slightly higher angle, like someone else was streaming it. The camera was supposed to face outward, but somehow it had been remotely flipped. Then came the voice. A distorted, robotic whisper through the intercom said, "Nice house. You leave the lights on when you sleep." Terrified, the family unplugged everything and called police. Investigators discovered the system had been hacked through an unsecured Wi-Fi connection. But the trace led somewhere unexpected. An IP address linked to a smart home testing lab in another state. When questioned, the company denied involvement, but soon after the story hit the news, the website for that company vanished overnight. A teenager named Lily from Oregon decided to prank her neighbors on Halloween. She wore a ghost mask and rang random doorbells, laughing as she watched their reactions from the bushes. Around midnight, she targeted one last house, an old property at the end of the street with boarded windows and no lights. She rang the bell and ran off giggling. But the doorbell camera did record something, not Lily. It showed the door opening and a tall, pale figure stepping out slowly. The man looked directly at the camera, his eyes reflecting light like an animal's. He didn't speak, just smiled and whispered, "Trick or treat." The next morning, Lily went back to the house with her friends to brag. But the building was empty, condemned and abandoned for years. The city records later confirmed that address hadn't had electricity or residents for almost a decade. So where did the footage come from? No one knows, because when the police retrieved the data, the file was corrupted. Only one frame remained intact, the smiling man's reflection, frozen in time. The last story comes from a small town in Maine, and it's one of the few where the camera itself saved someone's life. A young woman named Emily was home alone when her doorbell rang twice, softly. She checked the camera and saw an elderly woman asking for help. Emily hesitated, but felt guilty leaving someone outside in the cold. She opened the door slightly, and that's when she noticed something strange. The old woman's hands were completely clean, no wrinkles, and she wasn't shivering despite the snow. Emily shut the door immediately and called the police. They arrived and reviewed the footage and realized the elderly woman was actually a man in disguise. Under the wig, his real face was partially visible, a face already on the state's wanted list. He had been breaking into houses across the region by pretending to be someone in need. Emily's doorbell camera exposed him, leading to his arrest that same night.